Hello everybody, welcome to Ask Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. I'm trying to hit 100k subscribers and we're about 10k away, so your subscription would be much appreciated. Drop a like, helps it perform better in the YouTube algorithm, all that. This is a hot take series where I take your hot takes, so if you didn't know that, I don't know why. It was pretty obvious based on how it was advertised. Let's get into it. DAngelo Russell is one of the most underrated players in the league. He was an essential part of the Timberwolves, especially in the regular season when he rallied the team as their leader and defensive communicator. A lot of people count him out for this T-Wolves team. I do think he is underrated in the defensive leap that he has made. His inefficiency as an offensive player is still a huge problem and very much reared its ugly head in that in the Memphis Grizzlies series. That said, the fact that he is like a plus defender now is like entirely undermentioned when talking about him. And like, I feel like it's something that only people who are really in the know. And like, he has reputation has so much more to do with how defenders are, how much people are labeled defensively than what's actually true. DAngelo Russell is actually a pretty damn great defender. Now his one-on-one stuff, and he's like physically capable, like how physically capable he is versus certain matchups and all that can be a problem. But as a defensive communicator and as a team defender, which are like two of the most important skills in defense in my opinion, he is really good at it, and it's unconventional. I didn't expect him to be able to do that in the way that he has done it, but he's part of a big reason why the Timberwolves were not terrible defensively last year, in spite of the fact that their defensive personnel outside of a few players was not particularly amazing. And it's only going to be even better now that he's out there alongside Rudy fucking Gobert. So I do applaud D'Lo for that. That said, I don't know that I quite agree with the like most underrated players in the league assessment. I think he's fine. Scotty Barnes can undoubtedly be a #1 option on a contending team. I think highly of Scotty Barnes, but are we watching the same player? If you're making the case for him now, I don't have to tell you why that's a stupid decision. If you're a stupid take. If you're making the case for going forward a few years from now, I could see it, but there is a question of his wiring, although I do think he was aggressive enough of a scorer in his rookie year to like kind of put those questions a little bit more to bed, especially by comparison to what was expected of him. But his jump shot, all of that, like, are we this confident he's going to be a #1 scoring option? I would project that Scotty Barnes is probably a 23 point per game guy going into the future, but #1 scoring option on a contending team. Now, if you want to say #1 best player, I think that is a little bit more reasonable. Again, it's really difficult to project that kind of thing for just about anybody, especially not somebody who's a big-time shot creator. But if you want to say #1 player, sure. #1 scoring option, I would be surprised if Scotty Barnes' scoring game got good enough to be among the top 10 scorers in the NBA. Let's put it that way. Ja Morant is going to win the MVP. I recorded this video a while ago and it's not out yet, but I did make a predictions video about the MVP award for my main channel, and Ja Morant is definitely mentioned, and I think he has a legitimate case. I'm not going to go into too much depth about why ultimately I didn't pick him to be the award winner, but I would be lying if I said he didn't have a legitimate shot. Trey Young will be a top 10 player in the league. I mean, he's already bordering on that territory, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was true. Although I do begin to wonder, like, how much more can Trey improve outside of just being better defensively? Like, at what point is his offense so perfect that all he can do to actually rise among the ranks in the league is to actually be a not complete defensive liability? He is offensively, like, improving his 3-point percentage is about all I would expect of him to change his offensive game from here, and doing so through being more of an off-ball threat. And like, those are notable leaps, but like, is Trey Young being good off ball and shooting 40% from 3? Like, is that the difference between him being the 13th best player and like the 7th? I don't think it is. I think the fact that he is the defensive liability that he is ultimately the real thing that's going to hold him back from leapfrogging into being a complete superstar. Giannis is the second greatest power forward ever, and anyone who tries to say Kevin Garnett, and I'll just throw other names in here like Dirk Nowitzki and Charles Barkley, they are living in the past. I'm not going to lie. Like, the thing is, I probably would still not put Giannis at number 2 quite yet, just simply because of the all-time stats that are going to be in the favor of guys like Dirk and Kevin Garnett. Like, I realize Dirk only has 1 championship and one MVP, but he also has 30,000 career points, and that's nothing to shake a stick at. So I do believe Giannis will absolutely retire as, at bare minimum, the second best power forward. I wouldn't be shocked if he retired as higher all time than Tim Duncan, to be completely honest with you, because I believe it's possible for Giannis to retire as a top 3 player of all time. But I do agree, like, Giannis is probably higher on that list than most people would give him credit for. Like, I would probably put him at 4 right now, behind KG and Dirk. I'd probably put him over Charles Barkley and Karl Malone. So yeah, I do understand what this take is trying to say, but it is, from a resume perspective, Giannis has done so much in such a short amount of time. The Lakers are missing the playoffs again if they don't make a significant trade to fill roster holes. Well, I just recorded a video today about the Patrick Beverley trade, and we're going to see whether or not they actually tackle a Buddy Hield and what's his name? Miles Turner trade. So maybe that's the big move that you're looking for here. Ja Morant is going to develop his shot and be overall better than Curry. Not a better shooter, but overall better. If we are presuming that Stephen Curry is as good as we saw Stephen Curry in last year's playoffs, because he was much better than he was in comparison to the slump that he had to close last year. And I put quotes around slump, but it definitely was a slump, because by Steph Curry standards, shooting below 40% from 3 for a season, it's the worst shooting season that Steph has ever had. But assuming that he is what he was in the playoffs, do you understand? This is the thing that bothers me about the way that people compare so fragrantly compare other players. Fragrantly? Fragrance is like smells good. Flagrantly compare people to Stephen Curry, is that you understand when you're saying that Ja Morant is going to be better than Steph next year, you are saying that he is going to be better than one of the greatest players of all time, still very much in the middle of his peak. So I don't know about that one. The same shit as when they were saying that Dame was better. It's like, okay, so if Dame is better than Steph, you were saying that Dame is better than a top 15 player of all time. Are we sure about that? Like, people are not properly respecting Stephen Curry almost ever when they put players above him. In order for Ja to be better than Steph next year, it would take a fucking lot. Okay, I mentioned in my last Hot Takes video, I'm going to start making the last take of every video a media take of some kind. I know it's going to kill my watch time, but I love talking about TV shows, movies, and video games. And I actually have a film channel for it, and I'm trying to actually start uploading on it again. But until then, this is my outlet to talk about it to people because I feel like it. And this take is Walter White was the good guy. Now, I'm not going to bother wasting my time explaining exactly why that's not true, because we all know that's not true, or at least we very well should. But what I wanted to talk about is the common thing of people, and especially it happens with young men, it seems to. They're just the most common ones where this happens, where they misunderstand the point of a character. Whether it's Walter White, whether it's Jordan Belfort, whether it's BoJack Horseman, not understanding that you're watching an anti-hero, and not like an anti-hero in the Deadpool kind of way, like an anti-hero in the or not an anti-hero, I should say. An anti-hero is honestly too positive a way of looking at it. Looking at essentially the villain, but the villain's the protagonist. Like, that is not, that confuses people. It's because they watch movies through the lens of the protagonist is typically the good guy. Very rarely are you watching from the villain's point of view. And that's where the show hooks you, is slowly. It's generally with these characters, it's a slow unraveling. Sometimes in the case of Jordan Belfort or in the case of BoJack Horseman, it's like kind of obvious they're the bad guy from the very beginning and not to be looked up to. But yeah, I don't know. Some people get confused just from the lens that it's put, and also because they want to be those types of guys. They view those attributes as positive, and they're really not. Living your life constantly doing drugs and cheating on your partner and scamming people out of millions and millions of dollars, and then like that kind of shit, it's not a positive thing to do. I understand why there are parts of that that appear cool, but like, you're not a good person if you're doing that. It's cool to be a drug kingpin, I guess, but destroying your family and getting other members of your family killed as a result of that, spoiler alert, also not fucking cool. BoJack Horseman is, you know, we like aspects of his character because of his sarcasm, and he can be funny and all that. And there are aspects of him that are relatable, and at least he's self-aware of the fact that he's a piece of shit. But there are so many actions that he performs in that show that are indefensible, and it can be just simply a misunderstanding, or it can also be concerning when people genuinely believe that those guys like Walter White are the good guy. No, absolutely not. They're bad people, and you're just seeing them through the lens of a protagonist. Everybody's the hero of their own story. Walter White's the hero of his story in his head, but if you watch Breaking Bad actively, which is exactly what you should do because it's the quality of show that the more you pay attention, the more you get out of it because of how many details there are. So long as you are actively watching and not just passively, mindlessly popcorn watching, like, you should pick up on the fact that Walter White does too many indefensible things to be considered a good person by the end of the show, and really by the middle of the show. But yeah, that was it. Goodbye.